Isolated on a desolate planet, an Enterprise rescue party find themselves locked in a bloody battle for survival in Star Trek Strange New Worlds' first season, 9th episode, All Those Who Wonder. But what happened? What did I like, and what didn't I like so much? Before I get into this recap and review, please note this video contains spoilers, so if you've not yet seen this episode or any of Strange New Worlds' first season, this might not be the video for you. Let's warp into this. The crew gather in Pike's quarters to celebrate cadets Chia and Uhura, who have completed their assignments on the Enterprise. Uhura is hesitant to join in the celebrations, still uncertain of her future in Starfleet. Hoping to convince her to stay, Pike reminds the cadet of her impact on the ship and tells her she'll always have a place on the Enterprise. The party is interrupted by Spock, who informs Pike of a new priority assignment from Starfleet. The Enterprise has been ordered to retrieve the USS Peregrine and its crew, which Starfleet lost contact with following the ship's emergency landing on a Class L planet. With the Enterprise already on an important mission to Deep Space Station K7, Pike decides to split the crew, leading a rescue mission to the planet. The landing team arrive on the planet and begin heading towards the Peregrine, which has crash-landed in a chasm. Spock reports an ice storm is due to hit the area in 6 hours, news which doesn't seem to bother Hemmer, who cheerfully likens the weather to that of his homeworld. Approaching the ship, M'Benga is still unable to detect any life signs, likely due to environmental interference. La'an then calls the group over, suggesting it may not be a scanning issue, discovering a severed human arm in the snow. We begin with very warm visuals, something that in retrospect would serve as a great contrast to where we'd be spending much of the next hour. I loved the breakfast debrief scene, which served up its bacon with a massive helping of exposition, but never felt obvious in this mechanism. It actually reminded me a little of Riker's scrambled eggs scene in TNG's Times Squared, an episode that also started nice and light before morphing into something more sinister. I have to admit, my dark humour did kick in with the introduction of Chia and Duke, who until this point had never been seen or even mentioned. Trek in the past has attempted to build a false sense of safety for its red shirts, with Enrique Muniz appearing in 3 episodes before being killed in Deep Space Nine's The Ship, and who can forget poor Pete Durst, who featured in Voyager's Cathexis before losing his face in the very next episode. I wish we'd gotten something like that here, as it would have given these characters a small amount of depth, giving us a greater feeling of loss. The group access the ship through a bloodied airlock where they discover the extent of the damage. La'an reports 20 crew, including the captain, have been found dead outside, and that some have been found picked apart. The group learn the Peregrine picked up 3 castaways, one of whom was infected with Gorn eggs and caused an explosion which triggered the ship's distress signal and emergency landing. Pike asks La'an for suggestions, who, after voicing a desire to kill any Gorn, recommends they rescue anyone they can. Uhura detects 2 life signs on Deck 5, 1 human and 1 life form that is unknown. The group make their way through the corridors of the ship, encountering more mangled corpses as they go. On Deck 5 they encounter an alien who is guarding a room who they can't communicate with. Uhura believes the alien, the unknown life sign, is protecting the human and suggests lowering their weapons. The alien recognizes this gesture and allows the group to enter the room, where they discover a young girl. In sickbay, the girl introduces herself as Oriana and her alien protector as Buckley. La'an quizzes Oriana, demanding to know if she is infected and why she didn't warn the crew of the initial infestation, but her questioning is halted by M'Benga, who suggests she make herself useful elsewhere. La'an reports to Pike, telling the captain Oriana went missing 2 years prior and, along with the alien, were likely survivors of a Gorn breeding planet. Buckley suddenly becomes unwell, with Chapel noting an elevated heart rate as well as strange and rapidly forming protrusions. Oriana, knowing what's about to happen, finds somewhere to hide. Buckley starts to convulse, drawing the attention of Chia, who is attacked and killed by Gorn hatchlings that burst violently from Buckley's body. Hearing the cadet screams, Chapel arrives and watches on in horror as more hatchlings emerge and begin to fight each other. I really didn't like this show's obvious attempt to riff on the Alien movies. The episode borrows liberally from Aliens 1 and 2, with a bit of free thrown in, actually, if you include that movie's climax, but failed to add anything new, never feeling anything more than just a lazy knockoff. Star Trek has successfully tapped into horror before, with TNG's Night Terrors and Enterprise's underrated Impulse being great example of those shows taking genre tropes and influences and actually doing something creative with them. Unfortunately, we didn't get that here. I also felt elements of the production worked against the tension and dread the episode was trying to build. Nami Melamad's score, which has been fantastic up until this point, was overcooked and intrusive when silence would have been far more effective. The episode also fell into the unfortunate modern genre habit of just ramping up the volume for several of the episode's ineffective jump scares. One thing that did work, however, was the excellent alien design for Buckley. Strange New Worlds, and most of modern Trek, come to think of it, has excelled with new creature designs that actually feel, well, alien. Buckley was no exception, coming across as entirely believable as an unusual new lifeform and not just an actor laid in suits and makeup. Chapel races to safety, jumping on a biobed and activating its containment field. Elsewhere on the ship, the Gorn attack Duke, dragging him away from the group, including Spock, who is visibly disturbed, having failed to save the lieutenant. La'an reunites with Chapel, who is searching for Oriana. La'an counts 3 Gorn and tells Chapel they'll soon mature and fight for dominance. Unable to scan for Gorn life signs, the two arm and head out to locate Oriana, who they find in the coldest part of the ship, an area La'an notes is where she would have hidden, knowing the Gorn hate cold temperatures. In engineering, Hema and Uhura restore the ship's power and main systems, including comms, which Pike uses to order the party to regroup in sickbay. Hema and Uhura encounter an infant Gorn, which is quickly devoured by a larger and stronger Gorn. Hema moves to protect Uhura from the Gorn, which spits venom at the engineer's face, but the two are saved by La'an, who arrives and drives the Gorn away with phaser fire. After loving their reintroduction earlier in the season, I now have mixed feelings about the show's depiction of the Gorn. Now, while what we see here is a marked upgrade on a dude in a rubber suit, they're morphing into essentially Trek's answer to the xenomorphs again taps into my earlier criticism that the show is just stealing this concept wholesale. What we see here also has me asking questions as to how the Gorn even became a spacefaring civilization in the first place. Earlier in the season, we saw them working together, presumably on a large ship containing multiple Gorn, but here it seems they can't even coexist for 2 minutes before eating each other. With this level of pathological hostility towards each other, how do the Gorn not have a serious population problem? As predicted, we quickly lost Cheer and Duke, both to tiny baby Gorns. The visual of a, let's be nice here, larger fellow being dragged away by 2 Gorn the size of geckos just made me laugh, which was probably not the reaction the show intended. The group gather in sickbay and consult medical data on the Gorn. Spock notes their chameleonic nature and various defense mechanisms as impressive, an observation that infuriates Kirk, who berates him for his perceived lack of emotion. La'an reveals the Gorn can't work together, something Pike notes is a weakness they don't share. The group devise a plan to neutralize the Gorn, using aggression as well as the ship's environmental controls to lure them into a trap. The team hatch their plan, reducing the temperature across the ship with the exception of the cargo bay. One of the Gorn pursues Uhura, who along with Kirk trap it in the transporter room, but it escapes through a vent and heads in Spock's direction. Taking La'an's advice to make it angry, Spock allows his emotions to get the better of him. Now in a furious rage, Spock traps the remaining 2 Gorn, where they quickly turn on each other in a fight for dominance. La'an arrives and notes that once they've finished fighting, only a single Alpha will remain. La'an enters the corridor and confronts the Alpha, challenging it to fight her. The Alpha takes the bait and charges La'an, who flees towards the cargo bay. Inside the cargo bay, La'an jumps inside a storage pod and calls for Hema, who blasts the Gorn with freezing cold air. While the horror and atmospheric elements fell flat, this was made up for considerably by smaller character moments that felt very organic, with excellent performances, most notably from Christina Chong's La'an and also Ethan Peck's Spock, who I've been impressed with so far this season. It's actually quite a feat this episode pulls off, giving us lots of action whilst also juggling a raft of small moments that either enhance the character or serve as some sort of epilogue for things we've already seen them go through. Ultimately, all this alien-like crap was worth it, as it gave us the right environment to stress these characters, resulting in sequences that could have long-standing implications for the show if those season 2 rumours are to be believed. Also, was it just me, or did Sam Kirk's outburst here feel eerily similar to the scene in the first Kelvin movie where Chris Pine's Kirk attempts to emotionally compromise Spock? I don't know, I just kind of got those same vibes here. La'an emerges from the pod, discovering the Alpha, which is now frozen solid. La'an takes a metal bar and screams in rage as she smashes the frozen Gorn, killing it and seemingly ending the threat. Hema exits the pod he has taken shelter in fine, but much like Buckley earlier, suddenly appears worse for wear. La'an tells the team the threat isn't over and that the Gorn's spray isn't just venom, but how they reproduce. The team scramble for ways to save him, but Hemmer says there isn't enough time and that his sacrifice allows him to protect those he cares about. Hemmer leaves a distraught Uhura with advice, urging the cadet to make a home for herself amongst others, a place she will find happiness. Hemmer then exits the ship, and after taking one last moment to enjoy the cold air, allows himself to fall from the ship into the chasm. Back on the Enterprise, the crew mourn the loss of Chia, Duke, and Hemmer. Chapel catches up with Spock, who is still struggling to control his emotions following the mission. Spock confesses he can't control his more aggressive feelings, fearing his mind has gone weak. Wanting to return Oriana to her parents, La'an discovers a lead outside of Federation space and requests a leave of absence, which Pike accepts, but urges her to return someday. La'an thanks Pike for everything and departs. Standing on the bridge, perhaps for the final time, Uhura takes a moment, looking happily at the communications station. The episode suffers from a few contrivances, the worst offender being La'an, who knows everything about the Gorn until, she doesn't. She knew the Gorn's spit was a reproductive method, and she saw the Gorn spit at Hemmer. I'm assuming she also knows the Gorn's maturation varies from species to species, so it's probably not the best idea to let Hemmer run around the ship. Much like last week, this episode saves its best for last. It doesn't quite match the Elysian Kingdom's emotional climax, but it comes pretty damn close, with Hemmer's death a shocking punch to the gut. I loved Bruce Horak's Hemmer. I wish we'd gotten more of him for sure, but his character had been developed to the point I felt gave his death the dramatic heft the show was looking for. In many ways, it felt like a correction to Ariam's death in Discovery's Season 2 episode Project Daedalus, a character who died in a very similar way, but was nowhere near as well developed. I didn't want Hemmer to die, but no one did, and that's what made this so powerful. Turns out Star Trek sucks at riffing on alien movies, but where it's always excelled is giving us tragedy and pathos, moments that, much like Spock here, force our emotions to the surface. And this episode's conclusion is another fine example of Trek doing just that. Viewer enjoyment for all those who wonder will likely depend on how much you enjoyed Star Trek's homage to Alien. For me, the episode failed in this area, falling into the dreaded no man's land of being too tame for horror fans and too grim for those who aren't. But what does make this episode a worthy entry is its character-driven moments, all of which feel consistent and organic to the show's setting, bolstered by some excellent performances and a major character death that, as heartbreaking as it was, just imbued the show with some much-needed unpredictability heading into its first season finale. I'm giving All Those Who Wonder 3 stars out of 5. But what did you think of this episode? Did you love it? Did you hate it? How would you rate it? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more Star Trek reviews, recaps, lore theories and more coming soon. Until next time, I'm the TrekLad. Live long and prosper.